So this video is about going out to the Harvester Homecoming out in Indiana. It's held every year at the Fort Wayne, Indiana International Harvester Plant. It's actually been closed since 1983, but they're doing a yearly meetup. They try to get as many trucks and scouts and tractors and all kinds of stuff out there as they can. It looked like a lot of fun. We had been going to Nats every year for years, but we figured we would swap this one for Nats just to see what it was like. And this is a video about that trip. My apologies, I didn't start the video very early this time, so I don't have a whole lot when we were leaving, but I picked up the action somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think, when we were swapping seats for driving. All right, you want to drive?
I'll drive, yeah.
All right. I want to stack. It's time, let's get a stack. When Brian took over driving, I got to play with my cameras a little bit more. So we drove via the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I had forgotten that we got to go through the Allegheny Mountain Tunnel, which is a little over a mile long and is actually pretty cool to drive through. Looks a little run down inside. Apparently there's some talk about replacing it with a road, but they haven't gotten around to that yet. I can't remember the last time I've been through this thing. It's probably been 20 years, but it was a lot of fun to drive through that. And then there was Ohio. Ohio feels kind of like driving through Texas or driving through Georgia going south. It just takes forever, and it never seems to stop. We did a lot of switching back and forth on this trip. Every 100 miles or so, we would stop for gas, and somebody would drive the next leg. So we had to make it fun when we could. I bring gifts. I bring gifts.
Donuts!
Donuts! All right, we got to figure out which one's which here, because they're...
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to have some beers.
All right.
And I'm going to have some donuts.
All right. Somewhere back in Ohio, we had taken the safari top off and put the bikini top on, and that made a big difference.
Called adventure, Brian. Yep. Fall for it. Even at our old age. What's that? Even at our old age. That's right. It's getting rainier. I gotta go hide under a bush.
Through it all, the Scout just ate up the miles, drove like it was nothing. She's really comfortable at about 70 to 72 miles an hour. Proceed to the route. Proceed to the route.
Do it!
Proceed to the route. Why won't you proceed to the route? 80 miles indicated here is 100 miles in actuality. So we're actually driving less than we think we are and filling up sooner, which means there's more gas in the tank, plus we're getting, I'm basing my estimations on 10 miles per gallon. We're actually doing 11. So, should be fine. Now, my math has been known to be wrong. Siri had us driving up through Pennsylvania, past Cleveland, towards Toledo, and then down to Fort Wayne. And then we hit about 10 miles of road where all of the cones in Indiana had been set up for absolutely no construction at all. With your truck in front of a Renault Alliance. Look at that. That is sweet. After we got checked into our hotel, we found a local brew pub and got some dinner. And while we were in there eating, we heard the unmistakable sound of a train. The funny thing here is that our hotel is on the other side of the train tracks, and at one point this train had basically stopped on the tracks and wasn't going anywhere. And then it started backing up, so we got a little worried that we weren't going to make it back to our hotel. Oh, look at that train. We're going to try to polish this turd up a little bit.
It's going to be the most beautiful turd in all of Indiana.
What you're seeing here is pretty uncharacteristic. This is probably the first time I've washed the truck in maybe 4 years. It was really dirty. The hood had been really dirty when we drove out, so I figured let's polish it up as much as we can. It didn't do much in the end, but it made me feel a little bit better.
Looking great, Bill. Looking great.
It's really the hood that's the worst. The hood it feels like it's covered in
Sap and right.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I just want everyone to know this is the first time I've ever washed this thing before any show I ever run. So this is a special moment. I hope everyone appreciates just how important this is and how half-assed this is going to look.
You're gonna miss a few spots, just to let you know.
Yeah. More than a few spots. It's also important to note I'm not rubbing this with a diaper at any point in the next.
Yeah, I'm just keeping the hose from hitting the truck, because
You're what?
just trying to keep the hose from hitting the beautiful paint job.
Yeah, you know, don't mess up the paint job. Look at how beautiful. Look at the magnificence. It's like a whole new truck. It's like I just drove it off the showroom floor.
Until it dries. Look at, I just touched it. I ruined it.
No, it's fine.
Look,
It'll
you're touching it.
gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Look at all those colors, Bill.
Oh, you know, all the colors, they just pop now. I'm so happy. It's like a whole new truck. Fantastic. Now, if we're special, let's see. Oh, they work great. Awesome. Look at that. Nice. We got parked next to one of my favorite Travelalls of all time. I love this thing. We saw this back when it was at Nats, when it was a shell, and it's absolutely beautiful now. So Friday morning, we pulled into the show at about 9:30 behind a bunch of other scouts. It was really overcast that day. The forecast was for rain, so we knew it was ahead of us, but we were still excited to get there. Driving to the Fort Wayne plant at first is really, really impressive. It's a huge complex, and it was really neat to sort of drive in there and see all of the buildings and the factories and everything. Hello. They were about 70. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming up. Where are you from?
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah.
Very good. He's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So you guys are rolling in.
Yep.
What part of Maryland?
I'm outside of Baltimore, and he's from the Eastern Shore.
Oh.
Yep.
Good. Very good. Well, I was an engineer and helped develop this vehicle.
Nice. Outstanding.
Yeah,
That's
outstanding. So I assume you're here to show it.
Yep.
Go up there and look for another red shirt, and he'll show you where to park.
Okay, great.
Thanks for coming
Thank you.
up.
Thank you.
I like Larry. There's Tom. Or, what's his name? Tom? Linder? No. I'll have to, I forget.
Whoa.
Oh, my neck just snapped.
As the day went on, more scouts and other trucks trickled in. It was Friday, so there weren't as many as there would be on Saturday, but it was actually a really good showing for a Friday.
Yeah.
Here's a walk down the line of trucks that we were parked at the end of on the first day. You can see the clouds overhead. They didn't get any brighter. That's a little bit of foreshadowing for the rest of this day. We got set next to this really nice couple in the Teal Scout and wound up talking to them for quite a bit. What I didn't show here is the amount of rain that dumped on us at the end of that show, and we basically had to make a run for it in the Scout to get out of there. We got soaked. We were holding our tent up with our hands. Both my hands were full or I would have filmed it, but we just didn't get the chance. And then we basically just threw everything in the truck, put the sides of the top down, and hightailed it out of there. And when we got to the hotel, we just left everything in the truck and figured it would dry out when it dried out. But it absolutely poured over top of us. This is a shot of the, like at the derecho or something. It basically was like a giant vortex of rain directly over Fort Wayne that didn't leave until 9 o'clock that evening. It was pretty crazy, and it dumped about 2 inches of rain on top of Fort Wayne while we were there. When the rain let up for a little bit, we made a run for some dinner and went into a local area and found a bar to sit at. And when we came back out, this beautiful truck was sitting out in front of our truck. We didn't remember it being at the show, but it was really cool. And I don't remember actually seeing it at the show the next day either, so maybe we missed it. And of course, on the way home, it started raining on us again. So we had to make another very wet run to the hotel. Luckily, my windshield wipers were working the whole time, so that part was good, and we used a lot of Rain-X. The next morning, we were really disappointed in the hotel food that was offered, the crappy eggs, so we decided to make a beeline for the local bakery where we knew we could get some fresh donuts and real coffee. And we weren't disappointed. They were really good cake donuts. The lady behind the counter looked like she had been there probably before I was born, but everything was great, and we enjoyed our breakfast a lot more than powdered eggs. Brian did a little research on our second day while we were eating our donuts and figured a different way into the plant than the way we had originally gone, which would take us right up next to the big international tower. This plant dates back to 1923 and was closed by International Harvester in 1983, but this is the plant where they made all of the Scouts from Brian's 800 all the way up to my Scout 2. So it was great to bring my truck back to where it was born for a pretty good photo opportunity out in front of the tower. So we had gotten in much earlier on the second day than we did the first, which was great because there weren't as many people there, and we were able to get a really nice spot right off the aisle. You can also see how much rain there is still in puddles on the ground. It just absolutely poured, and there wasn't much place for the rain to go. So the big tent that they were having all of the food under was a swamp. It was like a covered swamp, so they had to move all the tables outside, which was kind of a drag because it was actually a bit warmer on Saturday than it had been on Friday. But the staff had mobilized, and before we even got there, they had moved everything out onto the ground and made sure that there was a nice dry place for people to sit down. They did a really, really good job with the show. The staff at the show was awesome. They were professional and really on top of things. Brian and I spent a fair bit of time on Saturday looking at all of the Scout 800s to figure out how we would put an electric steering kit in these. More information on that to come. There's some engineering and some fabrication involved, but it's something that we were both interested in. Everything about the paint job on that truck is spot on. I love it. I love everything about it. And this guy had a couple of really cool Cub Cadets on the back of the flatbed too. And then, you know, from that beautiful paint job, there's just this incredibly gorgeous looking Scout. And I'm not being sarcastic at all. I just love the look of that thing. That's an honest looking truck. And then there's this just beast of a Travelall sitting next to it. We spent a lot of time looking at this thing. Just a really, really cool truck. Then we were back to the C-Series trucks, and I'm thinking also about electric steering in my Travelall, so doing a lot of looking and thinking and planning for how I would do that and what that would look like.
Radiator, I mean everything. Like the steering is the same. Plugs are all in the same place.
The only thing that's different that I see, it's weird, is that I don't have this mounted on my firewall.
Extinguisher?
It's for the washer bottle,
Okay.
and the washer bottles always fall apart.
Yeah.
I have this voltage regulator. Yeah, that's like exactly the same as mine. This is a 67. He's got the fancy dash with the padding.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't have the padding. It's metal. A small part of me felt really bad for parking my junk in between these other three beautiful trucks, but I got over it. There were tractors and all kinds of things driving around the whole day. And then there was this spotless engine bay on this C-Series truck that just had me drooling. This guy had done a really nice job with this truck. It's lowered, it's on wheels that I'm not all that interested in, but overall the presentation of this thing is just perfect. Just a really, really, really beautiful truck. This was another white C-Series pickup with all kinds of interesting stuff in the engine bay. Big, huge air conditioning compressor. That thing on the right there, I don't know what that is, in between the brake cylinder and the battery. Never seen one of those before. The rest of it looked pretty familiar. I mean, all of the air conditioning elements and everything were there. The non-dairy creamer bottle for the washer fluid is a nice touch as well. This is a really nice truck. I thought this was beautiful, had just the right look to it. The interior was really great. It had a deluxe interior with air conditioning. That's kind of a rare thing for a farm truck, but really, really pretty truck. And the hubcaps on the Steelies is just absolute perfection. Really great truck. This Scout 800 is done up as a Snow Star, which was a promotional model IH made right before production began on what became the Scout 2. The Scout Encyclopedia says a little under 500 of these were made. I don't know if this one is original, but it sure is beautiful. This is a Scout camper built for a short while in 1963. They made around 100 of these to make a Scout 80 into a viable motorhome. It has two fold-out sides with beds and contains a stove, sink, toilet, pressured water tank, and table. The Scout Encyclopedia says they know of 5 of these that still exist, and this one is in excellent shape. I remember seeing this at Nats last year and just being amazed by it. If you're familiar with the proportions of a regular Scout 80, it's kind of weird when it's all folded up because they added about 4 feet onto the back of it. So it looks tall and like it's got a load in its pants. But when it's folded out in camper form, it's beautiful. Just standing and looking around the grounds where everything was parked was pretty amazing. There's just something different everywhere you look. And it was kind of overwhelming to stop and take it all in. This fire truck was really cool. It's a 1953 R series that was modified at the factory, and it was the fire engine used at this plant until they closed the plant down in 1985. It's in beautiful shape. I mean, it's got patina and everything, but just look at this thing. The original lettering, all the original equipment is on it. It's in fantastic shape. That just looks like that would be fun as hell to drive. And then turning the corner, there's this buggy. I don't remember what this one was, but it was really cool to just sort of stand here and watch this guy drive it past, work the gears. He clearly knew what he was doing. I would be terrified of driving this thing, but it just looks really cool. This fellow had brought a Metro, I didn't catch what year it was, in from Texas, and it was like a magnet to everybody. Everybody walked up to it and was looking at it because these things are pretty rare. And this one was in really nice shape. He was actually selling it at the show. He's looking to raise some money, so he had it up on the market. But there's no way that I would stay married if I dragged this thing home as well. One of the best things about any of these shows are the vendor booths, where you can pick up almost anything that you might possibly need for your Scout or your pickup or your Travelall or anything. I was actually pretty strong this year. It was really good to see a bunch of old friends here. Phil Coonrod had a big booth here with a whole bunch of stuff, and I spent a lot of time looking through all of his stuff. But it turned out there wasn't a lot here that I needed this year, which was great. I didn't really need anything for my Scout. I did look at a couple of these door cards. He had a couple of black ones that were in really good shape. I considered those, but I didn't need them. And he had a whole bunch of dupes of other things that I've already got, so I was strong. I actually walked away from his booth, which is usually like, it's like a fly trap to me. I walked away without spending anything. This vendor had a whole lot of used parts and even a couple of trucks for sale. This really pretty pickup truck was for sale and actually got bought while we were there. In really, really nice shape. It was a really good price. It was running. He had dragged this back from Montana, I think he said, and it was just a really pretty truck. He was actually selling this with the trailer that was behind it, which was kind of a cool package deal, but I think the guy that bought it left the trailer. I wound up buying a new panel for the Travelall that I'll show in a later video, and a couple of backup lights, which my Travelall doesn't have. This was a pretty four-wheel drive 1200 that both Brian and I drooled over the whole time it was there. Really, really cool truck.
I mean, you may be right.
It was really great to see a lot of the old tractors that they had running during the show up and down the fairway. So this truck was a really, really cherry example of a Scout 2 that only had, I think the guy said, something like 14,000 miles on it. It had been a prototype. They'd put a different engine in it and then replaced it with the real engine. But this thing was so clean, you could have eaten off of it. Original upholstery, the paint was absolutely immaculate. Really nice older gentleman owned this thing. We heard it drive in and drive out, and we were actually pretty privileged to just park a couple of trucks down from it. Here's another shot of that yellow pickup and then a black A-series pickup that was just pulling in. These folks are known as the Rare Pair Travellettes. They've got 3 of them at this point. They're 3-door Travellettes that were made really, really early in the 50s, and they're sort of collecting them. Really nice folks to talk to. As usual, our canopy brought some friends to visit. This is our friend Steve. He came from Maryland in a different car, but stopped by to talk to us. He was transporting a couple of other friends from Australia, and so he was chauffeuring them the whole weekend. At 4 o'clock, the heat had really gotten to us, so we packed up the truck and said our goodbyes and headed back to the hotel to cool off.
Safe drive back, man.
Take care.
So if you look closely at the tractor up in front of us there, it's actually 2 International Harvester tractors bolted together in the middle. This is called the Garrett Twin Drive 400, and it was set up as a logging tractor in Washington before it came to Indiana. If you notice, it's doing like tank steering or skid steer steering. One whole side will stop, the other will keep going, and that's the way that this thing moves. Just a giant beast of a tractor, really cool, really unique. And this show was full of that kind of stuff. That's what made this show a lot of fun, was seeing unique things like that you would never see anywhere else. After the show, we went back to the hotel, took a little bit of a rest, and then went out to find a brew pub further into Fort Wayne, and found this place. It was actually really pretty cool, good food, good beer, and had a really nice meal. Sunday morning, we got up, re-topped off all the fluids in the truck, repacked everything, and hit the road by about 8:30 or so. I would say the first 3/4 of the drive back home were probably the most pleasant of the entire trip. The weather was great. It was sunny, but it wasn't too hot. The temperature was just right, and there was no traffic. Being Sunday morning, I don't think we started really hitting traffic probably until after lunchtime. And it was just a really pleasant ride through Ohio and the top part of Pennsylvania. As with the ride out to Indiana, we traded off every 100 miles or so, which really broke up the trip really well. You didn't get too tired. Your left leg and your right leg didn't hurt too much. You could get up and move around a bit, and so that was really good. That made the ride a whole lot more pleasant. This was kind of interesting. We passed these guys somewhere in Ohio, and it was really interesting to see them up close for the first time. I've seen a bunch of them out in the wild. I passed a couple in the truck and other cars here and there, but I haven't seen any up close like this. So it was also kind of cool to see them from underneath. They look like they're very aerodynamic underneath. But the interesting thing was they were all covered in fingerprints. They all looked really dirty, like somebody had been like wiping their hands in oil and then touching them. I don't know if that's from the stainless steel or what the deal was, but kind of cool. The rest of the ride home was really smooth. We only hit traffic at the very tail end of Maryland when we got onto Route 70, but other than that, it was cool, it was clear, and it was really smooth sailing. I'm actually not used to driving through this part of Pennsylvania, so it was nice to see some different scenery along the way.
Yeah. It's got to come from somewhere.
So that's the wrap up. We got back here at about 6:30 or so after about 9.5 hours on the road. It was a great trip, no hiccups, a little bit of traffic at the end. We did 1,182 miles on the truck, give or take a little bit. I've got to do a little bit of math to figure out the exact mileage because my speedo isn't calibrated for the bigger wheels and tires on the truck. But no complaints, it was a lot of fun, and I will see you next week for another video working on the Travelall. If you've made it this far in the video, you might be interested in some merch I've got for sale on threadless.com to keep this project going. I'll put a link down below in the description. Thanks for watching.